Today, we're diving into a major moment in UK politics, a historic vote in the House of Commons on decriminalising abortion. This is a big deal, and it's sparking intense debate across the country. So, what happened? Why does it matter? And what's next? Let's break it down. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more updates on stories like this.
The ayes to the right, 379. The noes to the left, 137.
The ayes to the right, 379. The noes to the left, 137. So the ayes have it, unlock! Order. Under the order of the House of today, I must now put the questions necessary to bring this day's proceedings on consideration to a conclusion. The question is that new clause 1 now be added to the bill. As many in that opinion say aye. Aye! The contrary, no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it.
I call Tonia Antoniazzi to move new clause 1.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I wish to speak and move new clause 1 in my name. Nearly 5 years ago, having suffered a rare complication in her abortion treatment, Nicola Packer lay down in shock, having just delivered a fetus at home. Later arriving at hospital, bleeding and utterly traumatised, she had no idea that her ordeal was about to get profoundly worse, her life torn apart. Recovering from surgery, Nicola was taken from a hospital bed by uniformed police officers in a police van and arrested for illegal abortion offences. In custody, her computers and phone were seized and she was denied timely access to vital anti-clotting medication. What followed was a 4.5-year pursuit by the police and the CPS, which completely overshadowed Nicola's life, culminating in her being forced to endure the indignity and turmoil of a trial. She spent every penny she had funding her defence. The most private details of her life were publicly aired, and she had to relive the trauma in front of a jury. All of this, Madam Deputy Speaker, to ultimately be cleared and found not guilty. Nicola's story is deplorable, but there are many others. Laura, a young mother and university student, was criminalised for an abortion forced on her by an abusive partner. He coerced her into taking abortion pills bought illegally online rather than going to a doctor. Laura describes his violent reaction to her pregnancy. He grabbed hold of me, pushed me against a wall and was just screaming in my face, pulling my hair and banging my head off the wall. Laura nearly died from blood loss as a result of the illicit medication he had coerced her into taking. When she was arrested, her partner threatened to kill her if she told anyone of his involvement. Laura was jailed for 2 years. The partner was never investigated by police. Another woman, moments after giving birth prematurely, called an ambulance, but instead of help, 7 police officers arrived and searched her bins. Meanwhile, she tried to resuscitate her baby unassisted, who was still attached to her by the umbilical cord. While the baby was in intensive care, she was denied contact. She had to express breast milk and pass it through a door. She tested negative for abortion medication. She had never taken them. Rather, she had gone into spontaneous labour as she had previously with her other children. She remained under investigation for a year. And Madam Deputy Speaker, one of my constituents discovered she was pregnant at 7 months. She had no symptoms. She was told she was too late for an abortion. She'd seen reports of women investigated after miscarriages or stillbirths based on having previously been to an abortion clinic. She spent the rest of her pregnancy terrified that she would lose the baby and be accused of breaking the law. When labour began, she even delayed seeking medical help out of fear. Madam Deputy Speaker, each one of these cases is a travesty enabled by our outdated abortion law. Although abortion is available in England and Wales under conditions set by the 1967 Abortion Act, the law underpinning it, dating back to 1861, the Offences Against the Person Act, means that outside those conditions it remains a criminal offence, carrying a maximum life sentence. Originally passed by an all-male parliament, elected by men alone, this Victorian law is increasingly used against vulnerable women and girls. Since 2020, more than 100 women have been criminally investigated. 6 have faced court and 1 has been sent to prison. Women affected are often acutely vulnerable, victims of domestic abuse and violence, human trafficking and sexual exploitation, girls under the age of 18, and women who have suffered miscarriage, stillbirth, or who have given birth prematurely, facing invasive and prolonged criminal investigations that cause long-term harm. I will.
Can the Honourable Lady advise us, is there any other area of law governing the taking of life where the guardrails of the criminal law have been removed, and yet that is what is proposed here when it comes to the voiceless child? Is there no thought of protection for them?
I'd like to thank the Honourable Member for his intervention, and he will know that the Abortion Act is not going to be amended. This piece of legislation will only take women out of the criminal justice system because they are vulnerable and they need our help. As I have said it before, and I will say it again, Madam Deputy Speaker, just what public interest is this serving? This is not justice, it is cruelty, and it has got to end. Backed by 180 cross-party MPs and 50 organisations, and building on years of work by my honourable friend Dame Diana Johnson, the member for Kingston upon Hull North, my amendment... Sorry.
Can I just remind the honourable member that she should not have referred to the Minister by name?
I do apologise, Madam Deputy Speaker. Every day is a school day. My amendment, NC1, would disapply the criminal law related to abortion from women acting in relation to her own pregnancy. NC1 is a narrow, targeted measure that does not change how abortion services are provided or the rules under the 1967 Abortion Act. The 24 limit remains. Abortions would still require the approval and signatures of 2 doctors, and women would still have to meet the grounds laid out in the Act. Healthcare professionals, not at the moment, but I will later. Healthcare professionals acting outside the law and abusive partners using violence or poisoning to end a pregnancy would still be criminalised as they are now. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, there's been a cacophony of misinformation regarding New Clause 1. So let's be clear. If it passes, it would still be illegal for medical professionals to provide abortions after 24 weeks, but women would no longer face prosecution. Nearly 99% of abortions happen prior to 20 weeks, and those needing later care often face extreme circumstances, such as abuse, trafficking or serious fetal anomalies. The reality is that no woman wakes up at 24 weeks pregnant or more and suddenly decides to end her own pregnancy outside of a hospital or clinic without any medical support. But some women in desperate circumstances make choices many of us would struggle to understand. Madam Deputy Speaker, New Clause 1 is about recognising that these women need care and support and not criminalisation. Members in this House will know that much of the work that I do is driven by the plight of highly vulnerable women and sex-based rights. Indeed, that is why I tabled New Clause 1 to this bill. I therefore have profound concerns regarding NC 106, tabled by the member for Sleaford and North Hykeham, which would remove the ability of women to have a consultation either over the phone or via electronic means, rolling back on the progress made in 2022 and again requiring women to attend a face-to-face appointment before accessing care. Introduced in 2020, telemedical abortion care was a revolution for women and access to abortion care in this country. Madam Deputy Speaker, we led the world. Evidence gathered in the UK helped women in some of the most restrictive jurisdictions, including in the United States, to access abortion remotely. Here, the largest study on abortion care in the world found that telemedicine is safe, effective and reduces waiting times. The fact is that half of all the women accessing abortion in England and Wales now use telemedical care. With increases in demand for care since the pandemic, there simply isn't the capacity in the NHS or clinics to force these women to come into face-to-face. And that is why NC 106 would devastate abortion access in this country, delaying or denying care for women with no clinical evidence to support it. And what concerns me most of all with this amendment, though, is the claim that making abortion harder to access will help women in abusive relationships. So here I'm going to quote the briefing from Violence Against Women and Girls groups, including End Violence Against Women, Rape Crisis, Women's Aid, Solace and Carmen Nirvana, who contacted MPs before the vote in 2022. They said, the argument that telemedicine facilitates reproductive coercion originates with anti-abortion groups, not anti-violence against women groups. The priority for such groups is restricting abortion access, not addressing coercion and abuse, and forcing women to carry out an unwanted pregnancy to term does not solve domestic abuse. Madam Deputy Speaker, I could not agree more. Colleagues will also be aware that another amendment has been tabled to this bill by my right honourable friend, the member for Walthamstow, NC20, who today had a terrible experience, unable to walk into Parliament because of the abuse that she was having outside and the pictures that were put out of there. And it was completely, it was just unforgivable. So I wanted to put my hand of friendship out to her to say that we are not in this place to take that abuse. And while we share an interest in removing women from the criminal law related to abortion, NC20 is much broader in the scope of change proposed to the well-established legal framework that underpins the provision of abortion services. And while I absolutely agree with her that abortion law needs wider reform, the sector has underlined their concerns with NC20 and the ramifications it poses for the ongoing provision of abortion services in England and Wales. The current settlement, while complex, ensures that abortion is accessible to the vast majority of women and girls. As experts who function within it to provide over 250,000 abortions every year, I think the sector should be listened to. More comprehensive reform of abortion law is needed, but the right space for that is through a future bill, with considerable collaboration between providers, medical bodies and parliamentarians working together to secure the changes needed. That's what a change of this magnitude would need.
UK MPs voted on a landmark amendment to decriminalise abortion for women in England and Wales. The amendment, led by Labour MP Tonia Antoniazzi, passed in a free vote, meaning MPs weren't bound by party lines. This is the biggest shake-up to abortion laws in over 60 years, since the 1967 Abortion Act. Right now, abortion is legal up to 24 weeks, with exceptions for cases like life-threatening conditions. But under old laws, women could face prosecution for ending their own pregnancies illegally. In the last 3 years alone, 6 women in England faced court over this. Antoniazzi's amendment aims to change that by removing the threat of investigation, arrest, or imprisonment for women acting on their own pregnancies. The debate was heated. Labour MP Tonia Antoniazzi called this a once-in-a-generation chance to protect vulnerable women, pointing to cases like Nicola Packer, who was acquitted after being tried for using abortion medicine at 26 weeks during the pandemic. She argued no woman should face prosecution in these situations. Another Labour MP, Stella Creasy, also proposed a similar amendment, but it didn't go to a vote because Antoniazzi's was selected. Prime Minister Keir Starmer backed the change, emphasising the right to a safe and legal abortion. But not everyone was on board. Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood called the move dangerous And Conservative MP Rebecca Smith warned that decriminalising could make the 24-week limit meaningless. Pro-life groups like the Society for the Protection of Unborn Children also urged MPs to reject the change, arguing it could strip protections for unborn babies. This vote doesn't change the 24-week legal limit for abortions or rules for doctors and abusive partners who act without consent. Those still face penalties. What it does is protect women from being criminalised for their own choices. Supporters say it's a step toward fairness, especially for women in extreme circumstances like abuse or trafficking. Critics, though, worry it could lead to unintended consequences like less oversight. The amendment was part of the wider crime and policing bill, and it had support from big names like Energy Secretary Ed Miliband and Transport Secretary Heidi Alexander. But some MPs, like Tory Jerome Mayhew, criticised the lack of deeper scrutiny, calling it a Christmas tree bill where amendments get tacked on without enough debate. This vote is a turning point. It's about balancing women's rights with ethical concerns, and it's reignited a global conversation, especially with abortion debates heating up in the US after Roe v. Wade was overturned. The UK's move could influence other countries, but it's also a reminder of how divisive this issue remains. Campaigners like Ailish McEntee, who works at a London clinic, say this is about giving women safety and dignity. That's the breakdown of this historic vote. What do you think? Is this a step forward for women's rights, or does it raise concerns? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going.